So, friends, I did think that it would be appropriate for us to just pause for a silent moment, given the sadness and the tragedy of what has happened, and with the hostages that were killed, and the continuing problems in Israel. So, just for a moment, even as we celebrate and read and study to try to improve our lives, we recognize that there's the sadness and the brokenness for our brothers and sisters in Israel. And as always, we begin Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitzanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen. We're grateful for the opportunity of busying ourselves with Torah. So let's move on to chapter 2 of Proverbs. Everybody has been with us at least for one of the first two sessions. The commentators give us the following suggestion or context or frame of reference by which to begin chapter 2. And that's that the opening words are from let's call the writer, let's call him or her the teacher or the advisor to begin with, as opposed to if there was a noun for someone who teaches proverbs, as opposed to a prophet who gives prophecy. So the proverbian or whatever, the teacher. And so it might be teacher student. We saw that in the first in chapter 1 there were some of the phrases that were parent child, or at least relating to the relationship parent child. In chapter 2 it begins with student or advisor or proverbian to the listener, to the student, or in some cases, and Rabbi Hertz, who writes the Sanchino version of a commentary, sees it more as an advisor to a ruler, to a sovereign. Again, in that parallel role to a prophet, like the prophet Nathan to King David, and whatever, of giving advice of remembering what are the important values that you as a ruler need to keep in mind for your sovereignty and for your reign. The overriding theme, or like I say, context or frame of reference, coincidentally, is that it becomes from this week's Torah portion, from Shoftim in Deuteronomy, which is the familiar phrase tzedek tzedek tirdof, that justice shall you pursue, and justice is fleeting. It's not just an easy thing to identify. You have to pursue it. You can't just obtain it. You have to follow after it. And of course, the main commentary of why the word is repeated, tzedek tzedek tirdof, is that you pursue justice justly. And so it seems like the teacher, the advisor, the proverbian was familiar, or that was the ideal in which he or she was presenting the advice that we find in chapter 2. Um, um, it seems like this is more of character development, which again you might see as who the teacher who wants the students to have the best kind of character development in their ethical behavior, or you might see it as the advisor who wants to see strong ethical observance in preparation and observance in the case of a ruler. And again, in the introductions, they give a quote from Maimonides, which I'm going to give to you, and you'll probably hear it again in 5 6 weeks in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. The way we walk in the world is as important as the directions in which we are walking. The way that we walk are as important as the directions in which we are walking. Um, and Maimonides quotes that and says that that particular phrase or that principle is as what he calls a mitzvah deoraita. That it's not listed in all of the 613, the list of the 613 mitzvot, but it is as important, as significant, as a principle for life as the other 613. So, with that in mind, we'll turn to the text. And if someone, I have two texts
Hey,
open in front of me.
hey, Rabbi, it garbled when you were saying where we're going to start on the text.
We're going to start in
Okay,
chapter two of Proverbs,
all right.
and let's do. If someone would like to read um, verses 1 through 6, we'll break it up as 1 through 6.
My son, if you accept my words and treasure up my commandments, if you make your ear attentive to wisdom and your mind open to discernment, if you call to understanding and cry aloud to discernment, if you seek it as you do silver and search for it as for treasures, then you will understand the fear of God and attain knowledge of God. For God grants wisdom, knowledge, and discernments are by God's decree.
Okay. All right. So a couple things to keep in mind. Again, the literary pattern of, clause one and clause two, the parallelism that sometimes they just one kind of reinforces the other. Sometimes it gives a little bit of a different shade or a different nuance. But a lot of them are parallels. A lot of them are doubling up. That's one thought. Number two is that, as I mentioned, that they see this as, again, the writer or the teacher, the proverbium, the advisor is, it is talking about my words. He or she is not interpreting God's words.
Right.
This is my teaching. This is what I want to share with you, dear student, dear ruler, whomever it might be. However, what's interesting is that I'm suggesting, the speaker, I'm suggesting to you that my words, that's the translation that Lori used, that are there. My utterances, Amarai, my the statements that I make. I want you to consider them as important as mitzvot. Interesting choice of words. Okay, when we talk of mitzvot, that's usually that come from God. But I'm telling you that my words of advice, my teaching, my instruction are also mitzvot.
Oh,
All right.
yeah.
All right. Then we get into those different words here that I think, we've seen them. We've seen the words wisdom, understanding, and
Yeah.
discernment.
Right.
Now, obviously, and there are three different words in Hebrew also, although understanding and discernment come from the same three-letter root, but they're different words and they're understanding different. So bless you, Gail. So somebody give us some ideas
Well,
on. What are the differences?
Well,
What are we talking?
because
Wisdom, understanding, and discernment.
yeah, but Norm, could you tell us the words in Hebrew
Word
that you're
okay.
using for wisdom? Okay,
Chokhmah is wisdom,
okay.
right? And bina is understanding, and tivuna is discernment
Hmm.
in the text. Those are the three: chokhmah, bina, and tivuna.
Hmm.
Okay, but when we hear them, before we get into this teacher's again, who I'm calling, I made up the word, the proverbian. Before we get into the proverbian's description or categorization of them, what do they mean to us?
Hmm.
Well, hmm, I think wisdom is not only good actions, but um, combining them with mitzvot or the actions of God or what God asks us. It's action oriented as well as just being wise. I don't know.
Predicated upon or based upon.
God or Torah, uh, the
Is
Lord
it
gives
is it
wisdom.
is it innate? I'm gonna challenge you, Laura. Is it innate or is it learned?
Hmm.
I think both, but mostly learned.
They mostly learned.
Yes.
So the wisdom that we're talking about has to be learned.
Yeah.
And again, in the context of this writing, is it learned? Is it what we call book knowledge, or is it experiential?
I think
I
it's
think
more
both.
so,
Both.
because you have to apply whatever you learn. I mean, it's not, it doesn't fulfill wisdom or hukmah unless you apply what you learn. I don't know if I'm right, but that's what it seems like to me.
Yeah.
Okay, John, you wanted to jump in there?
Well, I think I agree. It's both. Like you learn it, by studying, and it's also from experiences. I know with me, like looking back, trying to learn from my mistakes, so I have more wisdom.
Right.
Kind of hard to explain it, but
Okay, no. I think we all know, unfortunately, but truthfully, we all know what you're saying.
well,
Hmm.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, Gail, were you?
Well, I was thinking discernment is like, to me, is making choices to differentiate between different, you
Oh
know.
yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
So discernment, yeah, discernment
Yep.
has to do with picking and choosing, I think.
Okay. And then where does understanding fall in?
The ability to grasp information.
Conceptual.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So that you can, so that you can interpret the knowledge appropriately.
Okay.
To see the results.
That's the understanding?
Yeah. You're kind of seeing the result and you're going, aha, now I get it.
I think it's also considered proactive in this when I'm looking at it. It's
Well,
a
that's what discernment is
diving into the information.
yeah.
Do any of the three do they all coexist, or does does the I don't know what the right word is, but does the development of one lead easily to another or more easily to another? Is there a hierarchy?
Yeah,
Are are all
Yeah.
are all three equal and necessary?
I
Go
think
ahead,
Well,
Lauren. Go ahead.
well, chokhmah
Oh, okay.
comes from chacham,
Right.
from wise. Okay. That is sort of the generic global term representing, not only to some extent it is some book learning, but it's also experience and it's exemplified. It is the behavior that's exemplified by behavior of wise people. Okay. But uh, observing a wise person doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to be wise too.
Right.
So there's a need to sort of assimilate that, uh, that if you could call it a product, I guess, or whatever, the
Mhm.
chokhmah, you have to assimilate it. That's binah, and tvuna is I
Bina,
guess
bina is
I'm sort of going
understanding.
well,
Understanding.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, but I'm sort of going from the Hebrew,
Right.
the Hebrew constructs, the most complex Hebrew construct here is from the same source, from the same root as lehavin, which is bina, but tuvuna is like an even more complex construct. So that's um Tavuna, how would I that's sort of like putting it into practice, how you would
Mhm.
sort of develop it. So you have to observe, there's a certain amount of wisdom that can be imparted, which is in the form of these sayings, all these sayings, you could sort of get initially, it is provided by language, but language only goes so far. And then you have to kind of assimilate it within yourself and sort of so the bina part that requires an effort on the part of the listener, and
Right.
then the tvuna, that's even further. Then you have to sort of build on it. Then you have to have a structured sort of plan, how you're going to make this work for you. So
So it's presented in a progression.
it
Presented in
is
a what? I'm sorry.
I think it is kind of a progression. Yeah,
A
yeah.
progression. Yeah.
That Binan and Tvuna are yeah, they're sort of derived, and I guess you could say that Tvuna is the highest, is a thing that requires the most effort on the part of the listener.
The
That's
in Yiddish, in the Jewish tradition, if you will, chokhmah is more than just book learning,
Yeah.
yeah.
right?
Also experience. Yeah.
Right. Chokhmah is definitely experiential as well. Go ahead, Lori.
Um, my reading is that Hokmah is the goal, and that
Chokhmah
the
is the goal.
it's the ultimate goal, the
Yeah.
treasure, and the other two, understanding and discernment, basically, Bina and Tevuna, I'm not saying that right,
No, you are.
is the process by which we get to wisdom, sort of.
Oh, no.
Okay.
It,
Gail,
inter-
please.
I was thinking it a little differently. 3 steps. First, you have to have the wisdom to listen. Then you have to make choices, which is the discernment. And then the goal is to understand. So to me, it's like 3 steps.
Okay.
Understanding is really where you want to end up, I think. Because
Well,
if you don't understand, you can't
I,
you can't act on it.
I think what you just said is probably the closest to what the Proverbs are indicating.
Hmm.
Okay. I think it's the closest. Does that mean that it's the most correct? I don't know, but I think it's
No,
the closest. So if you look back again at verse 2, okay, and again the
listen.
Hebrew readers can see it. Um, that chokhmah comes from, and this is what you were saying, chokhmah, wisdom,
To
comes
listen.
from hearing it, right?
Right.
From instruction, and tivuna, the discernment, comes from the heart, libcha.
Okay. Hmm.
Okay,
Right.
all right. So so that's where we're trying to get to
Right.
for true understanding. And if by understanding this writer, again, it may not be for us, but this
Right.
writer understanding Bina is ethical behavior.
Yeah.
I still believe in my reading that wisdom is the ultimate goal. It's the ability to apply knowledge and use all this knowledge and hear all the knowledge. And you get there by understanding, making discernment, and then you're showing wisdom. You've gained wisdom through your experiences, but
Maybe. Go, Gail. You're questioning or challenging. Right.
I'm
That's
trying to
okay.
put it in words. I'm thinking about, it's almost covenantal kind of a situation, because you're not just given wisdom. You have to make an effort. Okay. So again, it's, wisdom is not a gift. This is something, it's not a gift from God. You got to work for it.
Mhm.
So to me, it's a covenantal thing. God says, okay, these are the things that are out there, but you have to discern. It's up to you to do that. I don't
Yeah,
know.
but again, realizing that in the first couple of verses of chapter 2, he, she,
Right.
whatever, is not talking
Right.
about the stuff that comes from
No,
God. It's talking
no,
about
I
the stuff
understand.
that
Right, right.
that
But
I'm teaching you. I'm right. I'm giving you this
if,
instruction.
right.
if you live a
But
good
I'm going to give the words. You have to listen, and if you don't listen, then you're
You
not
have to
gonna get
listen. I mean, I think we all remember phrases like you have to, listen carefully and take it to heart,
Yes.
right? You know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Then verses 3 and 4, according to the commentators, 3 and 4, when you read it, Lori read for us, right? So you have to kind of pull on your actress background, Lori. This is now okay. This is now the student or whomever it is who's challenging back to the teacher
Mhm.
in 3 and 4. All right. If you're calling me to understanding, you're shouting at me that I need to, crying aloud. You're shouting at me that I need to find discernment.
Right.
Is it, do I search for it like I search for treasures and, for money and whatever? Is it that kind of a search? That's the way that they see it.
For money.
The student or the listener is asking for further clarification. Okay.
Yeah. Do you search for money? Do you search for wisdom? So that
Yeah,
kind of
right. Is it the same kind of a search? Right. Okay. All right.
Process.
Then 5 and 6 goes back to, and again, I'll look at Steve. Is the key word in Hebrew is at the beginning of 5 is az, right? Then now it's not okay. Okay. It's the teacher or the coming back and say, in order to get the answer, what do you have to find? You have to understand, right?
Right.
The that one's the fear.
Yeah.
We had that word last time, or
Right.
reverence for God or awe for God.
Yeah.
Okay, the fear of God, and then you will attain knowledge of God. That knowledge is that's not a new word. That's now a new word. Okay, that's dot. Which what would you say about dot and with Hebrew, Steve?
Well, that's from Yud Daled Ayin. That's
Right.
from knowing.
Uh-huh.
So that's I wouldn't attach too much significance to it. I mean, sometimes the poetic repetitions are just that, repetitions. for emphasis, so I'm not sure it's a totally different entity. It's, in this case, I think it's kind of a synonym, for chokhmah. It dot is what you know. It's what's in your brain, uh, not more than that, and somewhat similar to chokhmah. But I wanted to share what what I'm hearing in verse 4 is a little bit different than
Okay,
than what you were
go.
sharing.
Sure.
That I think and this is sort of a recurrent theme, that it's sort of comparing the wisdom to pearls and to treasures and to listen. I think what the writer is trying to say is that it's human nature for us to be very a little bit materialistic, okay, and to be very attracted to glittering things and baubles. And so he's saying to the listener, you should even though these are just words, what I'm imparting to you, or it sounds like it's just a lot of talk, a lot of hot air, these are really jewels. These are like the baubles and the glittering things that you find so attractive,
And maybe taking it
and
one step further is that you're familiar with the search for or the need for materialism. I'm suggesting that just as you invest as much energy in that search,
Right.
put it now into the search for knowledge of God
yeah,
Right.
and
yeah,
wisdom of God. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. That these, even though this seems to be just words, it's a lot more than that. This is very valuable, and maybe it may not seem that way right now, but you'll find in the course of the years that this serves you to as much of an its extent as having a little bit of extra money. It will help you lead a better life, if
Okay.
if you take this stuff to heart.
Okay. Please, Lori.
I agree with what you said, Steve. But I think if you read it, it says, if you seek it, wisdom, as you do, I'm sorry, I lost it for a second. If you seek it, wisdom, as you do silver. If you work as
You're in verse
hard,
4. You're in verse 4,
Mhm.
right? Verse 4.
yeah,
Mhm.
work as hard as you do to get rich, then you'll understand the fear of God. If you work at hard at finding wisdom as you do at finding silver or money or whatever, then God's wisdom comes to you, right? Maybe
I don't know.
an active, diligent, and enthusiastic search, like you would for silver. Because it says, if you seek it as you do silver, and
Well,
search.
again, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go back to Maimonides, okay? Because for Maimonides, the importance of personal, let's call it empirical experience, the importance of recognizing the need for science, and I see a difference in verse 5 when they use the Hebrew word dot of knowledge of God. That's a different goal than personal wisdom, okay,
Mhm,
than discernment or than understanding. This
mhm.
is the first time that we're seeing it that way, which leads to a different kind of conversation. And again, focusing, it's Maimonides that leads us there, but right now it's Roman who's asking the question: is is what's the difference between for the student of Torah, or for the person who wants to have chokhmah, have wisdom and bina and understanding and not discernment? What's the difference between the things? Oh, hello, David. We found you, or you found us.
Maybe.
We hear you? Maybe. No, we can't. Can you hear us?
I'll have to see. I'm not on the
Okay, you can
screen
hear
right
us.
now.
Okay, well, that's a good start. But what's the difference then, or what between what we know, KNOW, and what we believe?
Hmm.
Okay, traditional Judaism,
Right, Dave.
and certainly in this kind of literature, the wisdom literature and whatever, doesn't so much talk about things that we believe.
Yeah.
It right? It's the things that we can know and experience and learn from.
Right.
Mhm.
And that's why it strikes me that knowledge of God, it is knowledge of God and fear of God are put together, are considered parallel. And I don't know if anybody else is struck by that phrasing or not.
Where does faith come into that?
Space?
Faith.
Oh,
Faith.
faith.
That's faith isn't necessarily knowledge.
Faith is
That's
definitely not knowledge.
no.
At least from a Jewish point of view,
Right.
faith is not knowledge.
Here it's
Faith,
saying you
faith,
got to
faith
work for it.
probably.
Faith
Again,
doesn't come into this.
I certainly don't claim to be a Maimonides, but I think that Maimonides would say faith is more linked to the tevuna, the way that you were saying about making choices.
Right.
Okay, faith is I believe even though it's not provable.
Mhm.
I'm choosing to believe. We say, we are not only the chosen people, we are the choosing people.
Right.
Okay, we make choices in life, and that I think is the underlying. Again, that may be much more Middle Ages in philosophy rather than Proverbs in a biblical time. But I think that's the way that they would answer when you say, how does faith?
One,
What
two, three.
what's the song? What's faith got to do with it, or something like that? I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's love, but okay.
Oh, it's love. Okay, right. All right.
Oh,
Yeah, we
excuse
don't
me,
see love
you should hear
forgotten
me
there,
now?
right? I don't know.
Oh yeah, I can hear you, Steve.
Okay,
Dave.
great.
Okay.
Yeah. That everybody. This is my big brother. Yeah.
Hello, big brother David.
Dave.
Baruch haba.
Huh.
Grace, were you raising a hand to say anything? No. Okay. All right. Okay. So we're then at um chapter 2. Should we go on? We did 1 through 6. All right, 7. So let's go 7, 8, and 9.
7, 8, and
Volunteer to
9.
read, please, depending on which translation you have.
I can read it, I don't mind. For God grants wisdom, knowledge, and discernment are by God's decree. Ability is reserved for the upright, and God is a shield for those who live blamelessly, guarding paths of justice, protecting the way of those who are loyal.
Wow.
Mhm.
Okay.
Hmm.
7, 8, 9. I've got 2 totally different translations.
Yeah.
Anybody else go in a different direction?
Little bit. I do.
What have you got, Grace?
So I believe she read 6 through 8.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's go.
I'm
But let's try. We got 2/3 of it.
I can do you will then I'm sorry, you will then understand what is right, just, and equitable, every good course.
Yeah.
Every good what? Course?
Course.
Is what it says.
Okay.
Course.
All right.
Wait,
Yeah.
the rewards of seeking wisdom and living a life of integrity is God's protection and increased wisdom.
Defined as what's one of those rewards?
Wisdom, ability, justice.
Understanding.
Knowledge of God.
No, okay, we got a bunch of them. Okay, understanding, knowledge of God. There's one here. One of my translations has success,
Hmm. No, can have that.
and another one has ability.
Yeah.
And wait, which verse are you on when you're
Seven,
giving?
seven.
Okay,
Yeah.
7.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Tushia is the Hebrew word that we're struggling with right now.
okay, yeah, because
Okay.
because in modern Hebrew, that's
Yeah.
sort of initiative.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's just modern Hebrew. That doesn't
But
necessarily
it's
have to have,
still.
And it's interesting.
I mean,
but
yeah, it is
that's
interesting,
so
and
it could really mean anything. You really have to go back to the root to figure out what it may have meant in the original Hebrew. Okay. And I'm not
the
sure.
word incidentally does not appear often in the Tanakh.
Okay.
And where it does is only here in Proverbs and in Job, incidentally.
Ah,
Okay.
And what does it mean in Job? How does it appear in Job? What does it mean in Job?
Well, into the thing of good results. I mean, it's related
Oh,
to Yeshua. It's
okay.
related to
Okay.
salvation.
Hmm.
Would not necessarily be a Jewish translation, but what might be meant. But yeah, good things,
Hmm.
more like, success. It's not necessarily prosperity,
Hmm.
but I think it's, if I remember correctly, in Job it's linked to Parnasav Yeshua,
Okay.
Tishua, yeah,
Okay. Okay.
sustenance and prosperity or success, good things in that way.
Hmm. And the second part is Magen Leholchei Tom. So
Right.
Holchei Tom are people who are sort of walking in the path of Tom is like well, how would I translate that? I don't know. Well,
Well, you
Tom
give a translation
is
because I'm going to pick up on it. So go ahead,
yeah,
give a try.
yeah. Well, Tamim or
Uh-huh.
Tom is like very sort of it's not exactly naive, but it's like a very blameless person. Okay,
Exactly.
let's
Sim-
say
right. Simple, innocent,
yeah.
straightforward.
So
Right.
people who are going in the path, not deviating, of right behavior,
Right.
and not even
Ultimately, right. Ultimately, who's the Ish Tamim in the Tanakh or in the Torah?
yeah. Well, that's Noah.
Is Noah. Right.
Yeah.
Right. But Noah was an innocent man, even in the face of all the evil around him. Which incidentally, the Hebrew for that evil is Hamas, but we won't
ah,
Mm,
necessarily.
is it
We won't
really?
yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. So he is he's a protector that, sometimes I mean, people are concerned because if you're a little bit too naive, you could be taken advantage of, you could find yourself in trouble. So there is reassurance here that
Uh-huh.
God is a shield to you. If you're gonna, if you do the right things, always God will be there for you.
Right, right. And I forget which number Psalm, but there's the phrase Shmor Tam Urei Yashar, when that guard the innocent, or guard the simple and the straightforward, and mark mark especially those who are yashar, those who are, who are upright, who are confident. The phrase when someone does something good or comes up onto the bima, we say yashar koach or yoshar kochacha.
Mhm.
May your strength be straightened
Mhm.
in that sense. Right. Okay. All right. Um, so Toshia or Tushia is the one of the gifts that come from God, and then God will also be a magain, will be a shield for those who are correct, if you will, in their behavior. Again, again, this is the teacher, the proverbian, the advisor, strengthening the case for ethical behavior and good choices on the part of the students or the leader, whatever.
Right.
Okay. Then in verse 8, what's the key word or wording in 8? We've already seen about mishpat. We've already seen that word. That's another word for justice, right? But then,
Loyal.
loyal. That's for chas. You've heard of the Hasidim, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Which throughout the centuries of Jewish life, the Hasid, it refers to different sects,
Oh,
different
very
groups of
different. Yeah.
people, very, very different groups than what we think of when we hear about the Hasidim
Right.
in today's world, or for the last 200 years or so, let's say. But one of the commentaries, one of the more modern commentaries, points us to something with which I'm very familiar. I have to give you the story, the personal story about this. So Nelson Glick of beloved memory, that's a name that some of you may have heard. Nelson Glick was the president first of the Hebrew Union College in the late 1940s into the 1950s and 1960s, throughout the decade of the 60s. In the early 50s, the Hebrew Union College, which was the Reform Rabbinic School that was founded in 1875, merged with the Jewish Institute of Religion, which was the other Reform rabbinical school based in New York that had been founded by Stephen S. Wise. The two schools merged, and Nelson Glick became the president of the merged schools. Glick already had an international reputation as an archaeologist and biblical scholar, but in World War II, he was actually um, employed by, and I'm blanking on the name of what predated the CIA,
Jewish,
the
OSS.
Jewish
the
Institute of
the
Religion.
OSS, right? Yeah, okay. So he was like with Lawrence of Arabia out in the desert, mapping out from the biblical point of view, from his knowledge of the biblical point of view, where all these different places were, and sending the information to the Allies so that they would be prepared when they were fighting Rommel and the German army in the desert. They knew where all of these different oases and wadis and
Hmm.
places were. So Glick was already a PhD in biblical archaeology and biblical history before he became the president of the rabbinic school. Now, what was I'll get eventually to the point of the story. What he did his PhD dissertation in Germany. I believe it was at Heidelberg, and the PhD dissertation was das Wort Chesed in the biblische literature. About the
Wow.
Hebrew word, it's all in German. In the Hebrew word Chesed or Hasid in the other form in the biblical literature. That was his dissertation. My connection to it was I used to lead tours when I was a rabbinic student in Cincinnati in the rare book room. I used to lead tours that would include a copy of Nelson Glick's dissertation in the original German about the word chesed, because when I did the tours, especially for either Christian biblical students or for American teenagers, they certainly knew the word chesed. So here was and we would translate a little bit of it. We would talk about what the word chesed means. And Glick's translation of the word chesed in all of its different permutations, if you will, was that it had something to do with constant love. That was his translation of chesed. Okay. Now other times we see loyal, we see pious, we see faithful, and whatever. But this Glick's dissertation. Well, I'm sorry. What'd you say, Lori?
Loving kindness is another word.
Well, yeah, loving kindness. We see it that way. But Glick's whole dissertation was he picked out every single time that the word appears in the Bible, and he gave a different kind of interpretation to it. But love, constant love was his phrase, and that's my personal connection to get there. And that, but here it's the the way of God's constant love for those who follow, in that way, in that path, if you will.
Well,
long story. Go ahead.
Yeah, but it is saying it's derech chasidav. It's not the loving. It's not loving on the part of God. That the chasidim are he's going to guard the path of the Hasidim. And another is still on the topic of Hasidim. Weren't they the militant under the Romans? Weren't they the militant zealots were Hasidim?
Yes. Yeah, in the first century, yes.
So they are the people who consider themselves, most sort of most
righteous.
No. Bear with me. I'm looking.
Right.
I'm getting a little old. It's hard for me to find words sometimes. Okay.
I know the feeling.
But it is those who are without compromise, kind of in an uncompromising way, are I could agree with the word loyal. Who are very are very devoted to God.
Right.
And to what they see as God precepts. They're uncompromising in that. So that could apply to zealots too, which it did under the Romans,
No question. And later on, those who stood up to the Inquisition, for example, those who stood up and allowed themselves to be martyred were also called Hasidim. That they were that loyal. But to your first point, Steve, I have to and not correct, but make people aware of something. As it is in the Torah, throughout the Tanakh, there are places where they have what we call the Ktiv or the Kri. There are today we would call it a scribal error. Okay, there are mistakes in a spelling mistake. Okay, what we see here in most of our texts is chasidav.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, we mean those who are loyal to God. Though, right? Okay, all right. However, the original spelling. So somebody made a change. The original spelling is chasido,
Oh,
his loving kindness, his constant love, meaning God's. So
oh.
somebody made the decision to change it, and it's only by adding the one yud, if you look at the spelling, between what's written in the original text and what's written in and printed in the texts that we have today. But it changes the meaning entirely.
But it would be chesto or chasto. It wouldn't be chasido. It would be his loving kindness would be chasto, not chasido.
No, but no, chesed appears in different forms.
Yeah, I understand, but
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you're saying that the what's written is a little bit different than what was originally supposed to be there.
Yes, yes.
But what was originally supposed to be there would have been chasto if it's God's loving kindness.
Well, you could do it whichever way you want. You could either say God's loving kindness, God's chesed, chasido, it's legitimate,
Chasto, I think.
or
Yeah.
you could say that there's only one, chasido. There's only one way of being a chasid, as opposed to chasidav, which is plural.
Hmm. But
One singular,
what's the
one plural.
basis? I'm just curious. What's the source for that there was an error here and it's a little bit.
Go back to some of the older printed Hebrew versions,
Oh,
and you'll
and
see it.
and on the older printed versions,
It's chasido.
oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Rather than being overly technical, rather than even overly technical. Okay. All right. Then similarly, maybe this will be the last one that's only based on seeing. You need a little bit of Hebrew for it. There's kind of that one of the commentators points out that in verse 9 there's kind of a play on words, right? You aztavin tzedek umishpat. Okay, so that then you will understand tzedek, justice, mishpat. If you want to make one of them righteousness, make one of them justice. That's fine. Okay. Umesharim. Mesharim are the ways that are straight. Yashar. Okay. Mesharim are straight paths, if you will, straight lines. But kol ma'aglei tov. A ma'agal is a circle. So which is it? Or is it both? That there are paths that are straight and there are paths that are circular, cycle of life, or just because they're bent, they take us off. It's a real interesting way of putting it. And again, in the context of or the frame of reference of giving advice to trying to find the best way of living an ethical, wise, ethical, straight, whatever words we want to throw together. But it's all ethical instruction. Sometimes the path is straight. Sometimes it's a little more circular, or bent. Sometimes whatever that shows up in the Hebrew, but not necessarily in the English.
Yeah.
The play on words there.
Okay.
You could almost translate the Hebrew as and straightened every circle, every good circle.
I'm sorry, say again, Dave.
If the vowels under Mesharim were a little different, it could be Miyashrim and straightens every good circle.
Sure. Good. Okay. So one of the commentaries
Okay.
here, the promise of wisdom implies not only that you understand what righteousness ultimately is and how to put it into practice, but that you'll be able to know without a doubt what is straight and what is bent in human activities. Okay. All right. Let's try 10 through, maybe we'll go as far as 15.
Wow. For wisdom will enter your mind, and knowledge will delight you. Foresight will protect you, and discernment will guard you. It will save you from the way of evil men, from men who speak duplicity, who leave the paths of rectitude to follow the ways of darkness, who rejoice in doing evil and exult in the duplicity of evil men, men whose paths are crooked and who are devious in their course.
Okay. All right. And I want to stop at 15 because as of 16, we'll save that for
Yes.
next time. As of 16, it kind of goes in with different references than what we're encountering here. So what are they trying to point out here? We said from 10 to 15. Again, one of the Hebrew keywords comes from the word that means opposite, hefech or hafechot, betepuchot. It's a crazy construction, but there are those who will rejoice in turning the right thing into the wrong thing, and that'll be a source of rejoicing, kind of thing. That if you remember one of the first verses that we looked at, we talked just a little bit about peer pressure. Okay. And here it's not so much the peer pressure necessarily as what the commentators will say. I keep going back again to affirm what Gail had said about making the right choices between the Yetzer Hatov and the Yetzer Hara, between the tension of the good impulse and the evil impulse that are in opposition all the time, leading us. Yeah, Lori, please.
I'm thinking, okay, wisdom
There's the fire
enters your
bit.
mind.
Like I said, they said that they were going. I'm in a hotel. They said they were going to be testing the fire alarm,
And they are.
and they are.
Am I going on? Okay. Great for my migraine. For wisdom will enter your mind and knowledge. So wisdom becomes like a permanent thing in you. It's permanent in the way that you look at the world. And you're delighted by knowledge, whatever. Fourth, the discernment. So all of this is positive, and it saves you from the evildoers' ways. You don't get mixed up with the wrong people. You don't start doing bad things, right? Are you getting this?
I have to apologize. It's hard for me. You are breaking up, so I'm sure it was a wise.
We will not hold you responsible.
I'm sure it was a wise comment, but I didn't get all of it.
Just have the not to eat up.
Diana, it's working. Diana.
Wait a minute.
Mercy.
Okay, Hannah.
At least pretty much everybody was awake.
You can call the desk and tell them it's working.
But at least they waited until everybody's awake, and they did warn us.
That's true.
Yeah.
They said it started at 8 o'clock. They waited. All right. Okay. It works. It works. Somebody else say something.
Can you hear me? me okay?
Yes, Steve, I
Oh,
can hear you.
Above that, all that, yeah, Michigas that's going on. Yeah. Okay. There's a lot of discussion in this section of, the evil people, the people who are doing the right things. And, it might appear, superficially that why do we have to discuss this so much, And the reason it does have, there's a lot of repetition here about these, people are following the wrong path. Is sometimes sometimes it's very seductive, and it's not very clear that they are evil, because they usually sell themselves as the nice guys who are just doing the smart things. So,
True.
that
That's
they're
true.
the smart. Yeah, so you have to be very careful about not being seduced by by what they're doing. That seems
Yeah.
to be, it could appear to be okay, and
Right.
sometimes,
That's true.
and we all get seduced sometimes by people who are kind of convince us that they've got the right idea, and they've definitely got the wrong idea. And
Well, hold on to that active verb, the seducing, okay, for 2 weeks from now,
Yeah.
because the reference will be a little bit different. But so when you are in the presence of those who are trying to seduce you this way, with evil ways and challenges to doing righteous and whatever, excuse me, which of the three ideals, let's call them that, which of the three ideals that we began with gives you the best shield? We use that word also, the best shield with which to protect yourself. Is that chokhmah? Is that bina? Is that tavuna? Is that wisdom? Is that understanding? Is that discernment, as being the best shield against all of these pressures?
I would say discernment.
The discernment,
Discernment.
the ability to
Excuse me.
make the right choice, the ability to distinguish, and I would take it one step further, and not only that ability, but to have the confidence in the decisions that you make.
Okay.
It's one thing is that, well, I'll try it, or that I'm confident that I'm making the right decision,
Right.
especially as a leader.
Right.
Okay. We all get thrown off there.
No?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, we're gonna need to get on the road so we can drive back down to Green Valley. I want to thank you for joining. So we got through 15
Yep.
in chapter 2. And I did say, however, that well, Steve and I in talking, and the original, and Gail and and Grace and some of the original people in this. Does this time frame, if we would try to continue, we may have to take a little bit. We may have to hit the pause button because of the high holy days, etc. But if we're going to try to continue looking at Proverbs, Mishle, and and ongoing, does this time frame work for people? Do we need to adjust it a little bit one way or the other?
The only conflict I can see is the sisterhood has our board meeting every second Tuesday of the month. And generally our events are on the third Tuesday of every month.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Not always, but the board meeting's almost always the second Tuesday. So if you can avoid the second Tuesday, that would be helpful. The events are sometimes in the afternoon, or whatever, but that's the only cautionary note I could add.
Okay, and those would be on the temple calendar, right? As to which
Right.
Tuesdays?
Yeah. The second Tuesday is the board meeting for sisterhood.
Okay, but late morning like this, I know Ricky had told me she would prefer a little bit earlier on Tuesday
A little bit
mornings.
earlier.
Yeah, 9 o'clock would be fine with me.
I
It's
think
too
she
early.
had said
9 or
10, but
10 or 10. Yeah.
I'm
10.
10 o'clock would be a good time for me.
Yeah, 10's good.
okay. Lori, were you saying something?
10's fine. 10's fine.
Okay, 10. Steve, any thoughts?
Are okay for me, but I have already set the dates and times on Zoom. So let me know if there are any changes, because I'll just
Well, I
have to
think there
alter
should only be
those.
one more.
Changes.
One more.
Oh, there
at
is
this
one
point.
more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one more, 2 weeks from today.
So you want me to
Um,
leave that one as is, or?
Leave that one on at 11 o'clock.
Right.
And then I'll take a look at my
On it.
calendar, the temple calendar, and we'll see what we can work. But I'm certainly would be, excited about continuing on,
Okay.
Yeah.
and go
Do
further.
we want to continue Michelet, or do we want to try another book? Because we're a very thorough group. We
Right,
we
right.
may not get through a whole lot.
No, well,
I would like to get a sampling of a few other books, maybe, if that's possible.
Of a few other books,
Well, I would suggest let's try to get through,
I would just let
maybe get through chapter 3 of Proverbs. Yeah,
Whoa, all the way to 3.
all the way to 3, right. Have a good chunk of it,
the three.
and then we can
Okay.
decide if we want to go in a different direction.
My question, Rabbi, is it necessary to read Proverbs in order? I mean, could we do like chapter 9 rather than, or 15, or would be more interesting? Or do they have to really be read in order? Question.
No, the answer is no. It doesn't have to be read in order. But if we're gonna, in order to prepare properly, we kind of need to know which way we
Yeah,
want.
no, I know, right.
Yeah, but it's not
but
because
I mean,
it's not a narrative, so it's not continuing.
Right.
Right. There's a little bit of fill in that we could do, but that's
Okay.
that's
but
possible.
but just picking up on what Gail said, there are some portions that are like really well known that have entered the general
liturgy.
literature. And if there's a particular chapter that you could give us a heads up and say, here you'll really recognize some of these sayings.
Okay, let me do some looking. Let me do some looking, and we'll see.
Okay, good.
Can do.
All right.
I want to hear us discuss the last part of this one. It's
Yeah,
kind of
okay.
racy.
Yes.
All
I
We will.
want
All right, everybody.
this.
Be
See ya.
well, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Hey,
Thanks,
bye-bye.
David, good to see you.
Yeah.
I'm turning off the recording here.